If you clicked on this video, you're probably struggling to figure out what journal to submit your manuscript to. Maybe you want to submit to a reach journal with a high impact factor, but you wonder if the impact factor is the right reason to choose a journal. Or maybe you've published in a particular journal before and want to stick with it because the process is familiar to you, you know the editor, or you've had success publishing in that journal in the past. Or maybe someone has advised you to submit to a certain journal because they've had success publishing in that journal in the past. Or maybe you're overwhelmed by the paradox of choice because you have so many journals to choose from. I've been there. When I was in graduate school, I submitted my manuscript to a journal that my mentor had published in before. And I've worked with many researchers who choose journals based on things like the impact factor, publication fees, or because someone recommended the journal to them. So in this video, I'm going to share a systematic process you can use to choose the right journal for your manuscript. And if we haven't met, hello, my name is Crystal. I'm a trained biomedical scientist turned clinical researcher and now scientific and medical editor. Since 2011, I've collaborated with researchers to publish in high-impact journals and secure federal and foundation funding. And I've trained thousands of researchers and other professional writers all over the world to equip them with the principles, resources, and systems that they need to write well. And since 2021, I've been running my signature course, Scientific Writing Simplified, in the Redwood Ink Academy, where hundreds of researchers and professional writers have taken my courses to hone their writing skills, with lots of incredible success stories. If you'd like to check out the Academy, there's more details in the video description. So, what are the factors that you need to consider when choosing a journal to submit your manuscript to? Most importantly, you need to ensure that your research topic aligns with the mission and scope of the journal. You can often easily find this information on the journal's website under headings such as About the Journal or Aims and Scope. Read these sections carefully and make sure the journal is a good match for your manuscript. If you're not sure after reading the Aims and Scope, you can skim some of the journal's articles to get a sense of the types of articles that they publish. If you can find a handful of papers like yours that have been published in the past few years, then you can feel more confident that your manuscript is a good fit for the journal. But if you're still not sure, contact the journal editor. Send them your title and abstract and ask them if they think your manuscript is a good fit. Another important factor to consider is the article type. Not all journals accept all article types. For example, many journals accept original research manuscripts, but not all journals accept case reports, quality improvement papers, or other types of manuscripts. So read through the author instructions to check that the journal accepts your article type. Another factor to consider are any length limits. Many journals limit the article length based on the number of pages, words, or characters. And some journals also have limits on the number of figures, tables, references, and even authors on the byline. Be sure to read the author guidelines carefully to check whether the journal has any length limits. If you find that you have too many figures, tables, or authors, you might want to submit elsewhere. Or if you have already written your manuscript and find that you would need to cut the length of your text in half to meet the journal's requirement, you may not want to submit to that particular journal. Another important factor to consider is impact and reach. I have met many authors who choose which journal to submit to based on the impact factor. In case you are not familiar with how impact factors work, the impact factor is a metric that evaluates the number of citations received by the articles published in the journal in proportion to the total number of articles published in that journal. The higher the ratio or impact factor, the better quality the journal. But keep in mind that this number and the prestige of impact factors vary by field. For example, although JAMA has one of the highest impact factors in the general medical field, the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology has one of the highest impact factors in the dermatology field. So be sure to consider impact factors in your particular field when choosing a journal. So the impact factor has become the default metric for assessing the quality and reputation of a journal. And the idea is that if you publish in a higher impact journal, then it signals to readers that you produce high impact work. But many impactful papers have been published in journals that are not in the top tier of impact factors. For example, the discovery of CRISPR technology was rejected from many top-tier journals before being published in the Journal of Molecular Evolution, which has an impact factor of less than 3. In my experience, I have met many authors who focus on publishing in high-impact journals as reach journals, even when they know that their study may not be strong enough. Although you might get lucky, you also might get desk rejected without any guidance on what could be improved. And that could be a waste of your valuable time and energy and sometimes submission fees. So although you might be tempted to simply submit to the journal with the highest impact factor, I recommend that you think beyond the impact factor and think about the journal's reach. In other words, you want to prioritize the readership over the impact factor. Consider how many people read the journal and who reads that journal. When your research is read by the right audience, your paper is more likely to get cited, which is a better measure of impact than the impact factor. Another quality metric to consider is the peer review process. A quality journal will disclose their peer review process. They will describe the criteria they used for peer review, how they select reviewers, their timeframes for review, and how they handle the process. They will also describe their ethical standards, such as how they handle confidentiality and conflicts of interest. A strong peer review process will make your manuscript more robust. The reviewers, who are often experts in your field, will review your manuscript and point out any gaps in logic, overreaching statements, or how you might otherwise improve the manuscript. This process is well respected in research and should be considered carefully when choosing a journal. Another metric of quality is whether the journal has been indexed. Well-indexed journals are considered more prestigious, so publishing in an indexed journal will give your paper the most visibility. To index a particular journal, databases consider the journal's reputation, review process, quality of published papers, and more. So when considering a journal, check whether the journal is indexed in common databases such as PubMed, Scopus, or Web of Science. Other factors to consider are the acceptance and rejection rates. Journals with lower acceptance rates are considered the more prestigious journals. And the more researchers that submit to a particular journal, the lower the acceptance rate. However, the type of article you submit can also affect the acceptance rate. For example, journals often receive more original research articles than case reports or reviews. Now, not all journals openly disclose their acceptance rates, and different journals have different ways of calculating those rates, so comparing these rates across journals can be challenging. Some journals base their calculations on the total number of manuscripts submitted, and others use the number of manuscripts that went through the peer review process. And some journals do not share acceptance rates at all. But if you can find the acceptance rate for a particular journal, you can also consider that information when choosing a journal to submit your manuscript to. Another factor to consider is the time to publish. The time from submission to publication varies between journals. Some journals get back to you within a few weeks, and others may take up to 4 months to return a response. The length of time is often due to the volume of manuscripts the journal receives for review, and if your paper is sent for review, how long the review process takes. And then there is the time for the production to prepare your manuscript for publication. If your manuscript is accepted to a good journal, or you need to make revisions and resubmit, you may not see the article published for up to a year after you submit it. Another thing to consider is how often the journal publishes a volume. Do they publish weekly, monthly, annually? The more often they publish, the faster you can expect to hear news about your submission. Another factor that you might consider is whether a journal plans to publish a special edition that covers a particular topic in depth. If the topic of your paper aligns with the topic of the special edition, you have a higher likelihood of getting published. Also, journals typically receive fewer submissions for these special editions, which could make it easier for your manuscript to get published in that edition. So keep your eye out for a call for papers from journals of interest to you. If your manuscript fits the criteria, the call might be a great opportunity for you. Another factor to consider is whether the journal has any article processing charges, such as publication or review fees. These fees can vary widely from zero fees to thousands of dollars in fees. So the funds you have available may need to influence your decision of which journal you submit to or what format you publish in. But I'll give you a quick bonus tip that you can work these publication and review fees into your budget when you are submitting grants to fund your work. So keep that in mind when you are writing your grant proposals. Another really important factor to consider is whether the journal offers the option to publish manuscripts as open access articles. Different journals have different practices. For example, some journals, often the more prestigious journals, are still mostly closed access. Other journals are fully open access at the time of publication or after an embargo period. And sometimes they will publish certain articles or topics as open access. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, all articles on the topic of this virus were published as open access. And then other journals offer authors the option to choose whether to publish as closed or open access, with the open access option often requiring a higher publication fee. When you are considering whether to publish as open access, I recommend considering a few things. First, some funding agencies require that awarded researchers publish the work as open access, so be sure to check your funding agreement. Also, studies have shown that open access articles are cited more often, likely because they are read more often. So although you might need to pay more money to publish an open access article, your article might have a greater reach and higher likelihood of getting cited. Another factor to consider is whether the journal requires that you post your manuscript on a preprint server such as bioRxiv or medRxiv. Even if they don't require that you post as a preprint, this could be a great way to get feedback on your paper before you submit it to a journal. You might find that the feedback helps you improve the manuscript and the likelihood that your reviewers will not request major revisions before publication. So those are the factors that are the most important to consider when choosing a journal. Which of these factors do you consider when choosing a journal? Let me know in the comments. And if you'd like a tool to help you track these factors and choose a journal for your manuscript, you can find a link in the description box that will take you to a downloadable spreadsheet. The spreadsheet includes all these factors and will likely take you a little bit of time to set up at first, but then you can reuse it for every manuscript you write in the future. The spreadsheet also has links to helpful resources for choosing a journal. For example, there are several databases that can help you choose a journal based on your title and abstract. You'll find links to those databases in the spreadsheet. And if you're comfortable, you might even use your title and abstract to prompt AI tools for suggestions on journals to explore. But be sure to do your own due diligence to determine whether any suggested journals are truly the right fit for you and your manuscript. And if you like this video, you might also like this one about the best order to draft a research manuscript. And if there's something else that you'd like to learn more about, let me know in the comments. I create these videos for you, so I want to make sure that I'm creating something that you will find valuable. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.